products. And that's what we want to work on this next session that will be moderated by our researcher at the Catalan Institute of Oncology at our tobacco control unit, Dr. Montse Ballbè. So, Montse, floor is yours.
No. So, good morning to everyone, both those that are here in person and online. I'll be chairing this second session on another very important topic that is regarding the regulation of tobacco products, with a special attention to the newest ones like heated tobacco products or other products with nicotine or synthetic nicotine. Because sometimes the appearance of these products on the market happens so quickly that sometimes we are unable to keep up with these new developments and respond promptly. Our research and regulation always take longer. This product represents a significant obstacle and a serious threat to the progress of the tobacco control, and regulation is one of our most powerful tools to manage this issue. And to talk about this topic, we have here 3 excellent speakers. And at the end of the 3 speeches, we will have some time for discussion and questions. So now allow me to introduce the first speaker. That is Ghazi Zaatari. Dr. Zaatari is a tenured professor and chair of the Department of Pathology and Laboratory Medicine at the American University of Beirut. He is the secretary of the International Academy of Pathology, vice president of the Arab Board of Pathology, and member of the High Council of the Arab Board of Health Specializations. He's also the chair of WHO study group on tobacco product regulation, member of the executive committee of the Tobacco Laboratory Network, and director of the WHO FCTC Knowledge Hub on Waterpipe Tobacco Smoking. Today, he's going to delve into synthetic nicotine and regulatory considerations concerning it. Professor Zaatari, thank you very much for being here, and we're looking forward to your talk. The floor is all yours.
Thank you for this very kind invitation, and it's a pleasure for me to be in this beautiful city of Barcelona, let alone to talk about a topic that's very dear to my heart, that is, tobacco control. Before I proceed, I hope I was going to shift your paradigm. We have been talking all this morning about tobacco, but the hard core of the issue is nicotine, and that's what the emphasis should be. And also, being in a cancer center, I felt I want to share with you some statistics on cancer. I'm a pathologist. I diagnose cancer every single day, and much of it has to do with tobacco and tobacco use. And tobacco use continues to be in the form of smoked tobacco products, the most widely used tobacco product. Let's look at the global picture. There are 20 million people that come down with cancer each year, divided between men and women. So you can see they're divided. Almost equal numbers, 10 million each. And here we're talking about only cancer without talking about the cardiovascular complications. And if I list to you the top 18 forms of cancer, you see that those that I circled in red, their etiology is directly related to tobacco. So you can see the magnitude of causing disease when it comes to cancer, sitting here in a cancer center in Barcelona. But the shift of the calm now is about nicotine. And nicotine comes in the different types. The most common type is the one that comes from extracted and derived from tobacco leaves. Tobacco leaves are very rich in nicotine. And people smoke tobacco not for the tobacco, but they smoke it because of the nicotine. And the industry over the years have succeeded in manufacturing and synthesizing it. So today we have the synthetic nicotine. And later on, they modified it, they acted with acid, and they turned it into a salt. And then finally now, we have the analogs, things that look like nicotine, but have effect like nicotine. So you see your task here is going to be very complicated. Nicotine is alkaloid, it's very bitter. And it is coming in from the tobacco leaves. Most commonly what we use are the Nicotiana tabacum and Nicotiana rustica. These are the two most commonly used tobacco forms. These are the plants. But the nicotine itself has an insecticidal effect. It is teratogenic. It is neurotoxin. And it also has an anxiolytic effect. That's why when people smoke it, they get a bit relaxed. And it comes in two major, what we call racemeric forms, the S form and the R form. And in tobacco leaves, the S form is by far is the dominant, talking about up to 90% in the tobacco compared to 1% to the R isomer. So both have different effect, while in general, the S form is 7 to 15 times more toxic and potent, and I'll come more to give you details to explain what do I mean by this. See, these are the two forms. If there are this of you who are scientists in the group or chemists, the molecule have this S configuration, and these are the binding different molecules that will give it the characteristic for each of these two isomers. Now we're coming about the effect. If I talk about the two effects, if you look about the toxicity, and we define this by taking a group of rats and expose them to the nicotine and see how many of them will die, 50% of them. If I do this for the S isomer, a dose of about 0.33 milligram per kilogram is enough to kill 50% of them. While if I take it for the R isomer, it is 6.15 milligram. Consequently, what I'm saying is that the S form is 18 times more toxic than the R isomer. In other words, also, if you look at the pharmacological effect, that is, if I look at the administration to increase the number of these nicotine receptors or binding sites, the S form is more potent by 10 times when I compare to the R form. And if you look at the tobacco industry-sponsored research, if you look at the degradation, the R isomer is more potent in this degradation as compared to S form. And similarly for the behavioral effect, if you look at the discrimination between the two, you can see that when you look at these, the behavior, the S nicotine was 4 to 5 times more potent than the R nicotine in conditional taste aversion studies that are done in experimental animals. And if you look at the metabolism, again, they have different forms of metabolism. S form, oxidative, while that of R form, it has also methylated metabolites in combination to the oxidative effects. And finally, if you look at the psychophysical studies, that is, look about the odor or the irritant sensation, S form is has a burning sensation and more detected by the olfactory perceptions when compared to the R form. So you see there are differences where their molecule is very similar, but their effect is very different. And that's something we need to know. So there are knowledge gaps, and the reason for this today, because some of the synthetic nicotine has a 50-50 mixture of R and S. So we don't know the effect of this when people use it. And I'll come to explain to you the different manufacturing that exists today in the market. Second, we don't know about the long-term effect. When studies are done, it's done over a short period of time. When we talk about population, we need to have the long-term effect, something we don't know. And then thirdly, in none of these studies we have effect on the inhalation and ingestion. So this is something information that is still missing in this comparison between the two. So synthesizing nicotine is not new. It has been known since 1904. And the industry has known about it and considered using it back in the 60s, almost like 60 years ago. But over time, one of the inhibiting factor was the cost of it to synthesize it. That's why it was not popular. It was easier to extract it from the tobacco leaves than to do it in the lab. And today, there are 5 major manufacturers to this product. There's the Next Generation Lab, which is in the United States. There is Contraf Nicotics Tobacco, which is in Germany. There is a company in the UK, Xenoprima Life Sciences. And the fourth is in China, the Hangsen International Group. that is producing Motivo. I'll come back. And there's a legal fight between the last two about the right to this product. And then Enjoy in the USA, and I'm sure you know about Enjoy, its product with the. So these are marketed under a variety of names, like tobacco-free nicotine, imitation nicotine, nicotine substitutes, nicotine analogs. And I'm mentioning these to you for those in the regulation, for those in your audience who are regulators, to be aware of this terminology so they won't be misled by the industry. These are the companies, this is what they produce. What I want to mention to you here is to highlight the one at the top, what they produce in the market. It is not a pure, it is synthetic, but it is a combination 50-50 of the S and the R. And that's what I said, we don't know about the long-term effects of these. While the others have that ability, but most of what they produce in the market is primarily the S synthetic nicotine. Why this is important? Because we'll come back to see this is in the products that we're seeing in the market, and I'll share some of this information with you. This, for example, is one of these that is producing by the Chinese, and it's called Motivo. It is widely used, and it is sold as unflavored and flavored. So you have this recipe, you can choose whatever you want. And they sell it to these other manufacturers of the products that my colleagues will be talking about later this morning, how this is being used by the others in order to manufacture nicotine products. Forget tobacco now. They want to sell you nicotine. And we learn about the chemistry of it. We have been much more knowledgeable. When people are smoking the cigarette, they add alkylating compounds to free that nicotine. We have this free nicotine that will be fastly absorbed in your body. Well, but they discovered something better. If I add acid, it makes it more tolerable. The user is more accepting it. It is not as harsh. And guess what? We can get a higher concentration of nicotine. See? So they've been successful in doing this. So what we take this nicotine, we synthesize it, we add acid to it, and make it a salt. So now this is where the magic of it. And there are three most commonly used acids for this purpose. There is the lactic acid, benzoic acid, and levulinic acid. These are the commonly used. When you see benzoate on this product, it's giving you a flag. You're dealing with a salt. And these, they have found their way. We started with synthetic nicotine. Now we have the salt. And now we see them in e-cigarettes, in heated tobacco products, in pouches, toothpicks, snuff moist, and others to come. So I want you to be more informed about this so you can make the judicious decision about how to control the use of these products. And my colleagues will be expanding on these later on. So this example, for example, these are some of the things in the e-cigarettes. I know Ranti will be expanding on this, but the one to the right will show you the trademark of the company that's producing the 50-50 racemic compounds. Now, the dangers in a study like this that conducted on 16 most common disposable products by this company called puff devices. Look at the concentration of nicotine that was reached. The range was 40 to 52 milligrams per ml of nicotine. Just to show you the amount. The average is 44. And these are disposable. These kids pick them up, smoke them, and throw them away. And these have, the synthetic nicotine. Also, they found their way to nicotine pouches, and I know Reinskje will talk more about it. And look at this here. They say, this will give you to quit smoking. This is the manufacturer. It's available on the bench in a pharmacy. Just you walk up, buy it, and it's just going to assist you quitting smoking. It's a cessation tool. Well, how can you do cessation when the concentration of nicotine can be up all the way to 30 milligrams? So you see now how this industry is trying to use this information and how so there are all this misleading information, and you'll hear more about this. Even the concentration of nicotine that is reached in the body is quite high. as compared to other tobacco products, or even nicotine replacement therapies. And that's why they have been very successful trying to promote it in order to achieve this projective. So these protonated nicotine, that is the one that has bound to the acid, these are responsible for higher and faster nicotine absorption than the free-base nicotine. Now, the wonder of cigarette, when a smoker uses a cigarette, in the order of seconds, the free nicotine is able to bind to the receptors in the brain. The absorption starts in the mucosa of the mouth. And that's why it is the best nicotine delivery system that we know of, the fastest. And this slide is showing you this peak that goes up very shortly right after you use it. See this very sharp rise in the nicotine level, and this is after using a product like a cigarette. All the others, the snuff, the replacement therapies, are slower in reaching that level of nicotine, and that's why they're disliked by those who are addicted to nicotine. Now, with the e-cigarette, now it is ability to reach up very closely, not as fast, but fast enough to reach those levels of serum nicotine that will give the user the satisfaction they're seeking. And not only that, there are these multiple variables that will control the amount of nicotine efflux or influx that goes out of these e-cigarettes, depending on the design features of it, depending on the heating element, the liquid itself, the concentration of nicotine in that liquid, as well as the user behavior. So all these variables interplay in getting the amount of nicotine that will satisfy the user. And look at this here with the pouches. And even that, you could see some of these concentration. If you look at the one, is there a pointer here? Is this a pointer?
I think it's this.
Yeah. You see here, in the cigarette level, this is the amount you get in the tobacco. The one with the tobacco cigarette, it's here. But you can see the amount that you can reach with the nicotine pouches now, because of the high level of nicotine that is included in some of these products. And even fast, not only that, but also they can give you this fab because the absorption, you can see just in the order of minutes, you can reach that high level of nicotine, serum nicotine level that will give, because you just put it on your oral mucosa, the absorption will start. So I hope I gave you a picture of what the nicotine is, what synthetic nicotine is, those that are available in the market. But what's about the legal landscape? Unfortunately, the large majority of countries so far have failed to recognize this in their rules and regulations and policies. There are those that do not cover synthetic nicotine as such, those that only certain aspects of the nicotine, synthetic nicotine products, and those that are also, they have it in a broad coverage, and those that are unclear, very ambiguous, and not specific language they are using. And there's a nice study that has been done by Professor Berman and Zettler, just elaborating this, and you can see that the large majority, out of the 200 countries they surveyed, they have only 92 of them did not cover the synthetic. So the large majority of countries have failed to recognize this. I'm not going to labor you with all the details, but just I hope I impress on you the fact there is a homework that needs to be done at the global level. And many countries need to come back and revisit their laws to ensure that there is explicit, clear language when it comes to the use of nicotine and synthetic nicotine. So FCTC as such addresses only tobacco. When you come to talk about nicotine, they cannot do that because it just will change the terms of the treaty. So now we have to come back and be creative and how we can go around this legal thing in order to ensure we incorporate reference to synthetic nicotine as well as nicotine. So synthetic nicotine refers to nicotine that's chemically synthesized through laboratory processes rather than extracted from tobacco. The definition includes all forms of nicotine regardless of isomeric composition or production method when synthesized artificially. Other discussions for regulatory purposes, any product containing synthetic nicotine shall be classified and regulated as a tobacco product. These are some of the things, the language that have been proposed. And this includes e-cigarettes, nicotine pouches, gums, lozenges, etc., like I mentioned earlier. And also, manufacturers must disclose detailed information or contents of such products in their marketed products. And at the same time, we have to be cautious about the advertising, promotion, and sponsorship of synthetic nicotine products, which is now may go unobserved and unrecorded. The US FDA defined as any product made or derived from tobacco or containing nicotine from any source that is intended for human consumption, including any component, part, or accessory of a tobacco product. So this is where I think each country may have to come up with a division and to ensure that the language there incorporates such protective and more effective regulatory control measures. I'll conclude here by talking about analog. These are the new things that are coming out. This is just a modification of the molecules of nicotine. I'm not burdening you with the chemistry, but we have come to know about these anabasine, anatabine, and micrones, which I see them here. These are analogs. They're finding their way into the product. They have effects similar to nicotine, and you find them now in the market. And look at this pre-bar disposable. Look at their marketing. They have 0 nicotine. They're correct. They're not being dishonest. They don't have nicotine, but they have the analogs. So if we don't have this effective regulation to mark also not only nicotine, but also the brand, and look at this as usual, the marketing tools that are used, this glamorizing, these things that look like, and this is where you have to be careful. So the policy recommendations is to go back and look at any regulatory gaps to ensure that these are amended to incorporate reference to these synthetic nicotine products. The other recommendations that if you decide to do so, and I hope you do, is to extend the coverage of the laws to the full range of synthetic nicotine products. And to be futuristic a bit, the industry, we're always like this cat and mouse game. We have to be ahead in this game. And that's why we need to use the language that will be more incorporative of all the potentially that could be introduced in the market, including the analogs, for example. And also enforce standards of the purity of the synthetic nicotine. As I mentioned to you, what's being synthesized, we're not quite sure what it is sometimes. So they have to disclose this information and make sure that all this information is clear-cut and disclosed to the policymakers, and also to ensure that, and also to avoid the mixing, because this will make it a very difficult game to control and regulate. And also we consider the banning of these, especially the R-nicotine, because we don't know the effect of it on the long term, how this is going to be used by the industry, as well as restricting the marketing practices of the economy. I don't have to tell you about it, all these kind of the misleading information about healthier, purer, odorless, all this is misleading. So in conclusions, companies are marketing an increasingly wide range of these products. We have to be more informed. We have to be more aware of them, because ultimately they are addictive, and if the ambition is to how they're effective, we have to be, we don't know, and we have to be very careful about this. So we urge member states to regulate them, and the knowledge effect on their health effect remains to be in the very early stages of this. So we have to be watching out and learn more about these and these as a consumer products. For those of you who would like to know more about this, the study group on tobacco product regulation that I have the honor of chairing and have the contribution by outstanding scientists, we have this publication. It's available for you for free. You can download it. You're welcome to use my presentation to promote these notions. I have no objections. And with that, I conclude, and thank you very much for your listening. And I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Dr. Zaatari. Very interesting insights. Let's move to the next speaker. I would like to introduce Dr. Reinskje Talhout. Dr. Talhout has a PhD in physical organic chemistry and master's degree in the philosophy of science. She's a senior scientific advisor at the National Institute for Public Health and the Environment in the Netherlands. She's also the head of the WHO Collaborating Center for Tobacco Product Regulation and Control at the same institution. And as a policy advisor for tobacco product regulation, she provides advice to the national government, to the European Union and the WHO. Today, Dr. Talhout will be talking about nicotine pouches and their regulatory considerations. Professor Talhout, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to have you here with us. And I turn the presentation over to you.
Yes, so could I have my slides, please, or is it this? No, that's not mine. Oh, no, I see. Now it's in the same presentation. Yeah, I did not get that. Excuse me. Yeah. Yeah, that would be fine.
Sorry for that.
Thank you very much. So thank you, Dr. Ballbè, for this kind introduction. And my presentation of today will follow up on what Dr. Zaatari just told you about forms of nicotine. And I will focus on one specific product, nicotine pouches. We already saw in a presentation earlier today that prevalence of use is still low in the European Commission, but it's also, in the European Union, but it's also well known that prevalence will increase the longer a product is on the market. So most of what I will present today has also been reported in a TobReg paper. It has just been told that this is the WHO study group on tobacco product regulation. And I just want to emphasize that this is an important advisory group that provides the Director General with sound evidence-based recommendations to member states, and that those reports are also scheduled on the Conference of the Parties agenda. So this was one of the papers in the last report of TobReg. Here you also see my co-authors. It was working together with one of my colleagues, with John Hopkins and with WHO. And it's about characteristics, use, harmfulness, and regulation. And for the last part, it's important to understand that not many countries regulate this product yet. For example, in the European Union, nicotine pouches are not within the TPD. So at the moment, we hope, of course, that this may change after a revision. But at the moment, countries need to make their own provisions for that. First of all, some characteristics of the nicotine pouch. It's maybe inspired by snus, which contains tobacco and is often used in Nordic countries and also in the United States, not so much in other countries of Europe. But instead of containing tobacco, it is at least claimed not to contain tobacco, but instead it contains powder containing nicotine. It's often white or off-white, and sometimes it's referred to as white snus. So it's placed under the upper lip, and ingestion occurs via the mucous membrane and saliva in the mouth. So it's an oral type of tobacco product. Ingredients are nicotine, fillers and other additives, stabilizers, and also important sweeteners and flavorings, which give a pleasant taste by themselves, but also serve to mask the harsh taste of nicotine. Typically, a can contains about 20 to 25 pouches, and nicotine dose is typically around 3 to 50 milligrams per gram, which is in the same order of magnitude as the amount of nicotine in snus. And they contain a variety of flavors. I also want to mention that there are also nicotine pouches seen on the market that contain very high levels of nicotine. One example has been found of 150 milligrams per gram. So that's actually quite high. And as you see, this example also has some nice fruit flavors depicted on the can. First of all, an overview of all the different risks of nicotine pouches. I will go in depth on in the next slides on most of these aspects, but this serves as an overview. So they have attractive features, which serve to engage a new target group. They have high nicotine levels and they undermine tobacco control policies. So regarding attractive features, they contain many flavors and sweeteners, but also they are easy and discreet in use. So they don't have, well, maybe the stigmatizing aspect of smoking. And also they can be used in places where you cannot smoke and nobody will notice that you are using them. They're perceived as less harmful than other tobacco products. So for health concerned smokers or other tobacco users, this could be considered or at least marketed as a solution to them. And they're perceived as effective to quit smoking, and there it does not help. We just saw an example in the presentation of Dr. Zaatari that sometimes they're even marketed as smoking cessation tools. But there's really no proof for that. Regarding nicotine levels are that high that it makes them harmful to health, especially for the nervous system, and it can give cardiac arrhythmias. It's sufficient nicotine to sustain addiction, even though at most levels it does not give the fast kick like inhaled products. At these high concentrations, such high peaks can be reached. The flavor might also be a little bit more aversive then, but with the modern type of products, maybe they may get as addictive as inhaled products. And yeah, it could also be a gateway product to other types of tobacco products. We've seen that with e-cigarettes, so maybe with this class of products as well. And regarding undermining of tobacco control policies, well, I just mentioned that you can easily use them and very discreetly, so it can be used at places with a smoke-free policy, and people will not notice that, and it will also allow a person who would usually smoke to take this product and, well, still sustain the nicotine addiction. Then regarding marketing, they're heavily and aggressively marketed with many advantages. For example, that they're less harmful, that they don't give any smoke, and that they're tobacco-free. You see an example of that in the right-hand corner of this slide. They also marketed as having no smell, as mild, slim, and flavored, and as discreet, and that one can use them everywhere. So this, let's say, advantage of not giving smoke and allowing to smoke in a smoke-free place is really emphasized. Regarding packaging, you can see that they have colorful packages, which are also appealing to youth. A new way to engage attention is social media, and that's also an important place to market nicotine pouches. For this purpose, music artists are used, also football players and influencers. Now, here an example from my own country, if no. Which is the light, please? Because I don't see it. Now, yeah, anyway, you will see on the left hand side, on the below side, a young man. Okay, that always happens to me. So then I try it and it doesn't. Oh, yeah. So this picture over here, that's, yeah, you won't know the guy, but he's a famous Dutch singer. And you see that when he's enjoying his glass of Vinho Rosado, there's also a can of nicotine pouches waiting, well, maybe to be consumed afterwards. Influencers also serve to market these products. Regarding flavors, such pouches are available in a variety of flavors. You see some examples over here. For example, that they have a mellow taste, a frozen taste, the flavors you love, and also intensity and flavors that last. Most popular, at least at the moment, are menthol and mint. Products with cooling compounds, with descriptors used such as ice and frozen, and also fruity and sweet categories. So you may notice that this is quite similar to e-liquids. They also typically have those flavors, and they're well loved by young people. And also, flavor descriptors can be combined. For example, this is a nice description of a balanced combination of sweet and tart pineapple with creamy coconut and a nutty undertone. Well, that sounds quite delicious, and sometimes if they're also given concept names so that the flavor is not really mentioned, but it's rather implied, for example, by using tropic breeze. So in countries where one cannot use flavor labels on the pack, that would be a good solution for nicotine pouches as well. Then, regarding addictiveness, we've already seen some information about that. So, when using a nicotine pouch, the plasma concentration can be as high as when smoking a cigarette. With most concentrations, the peak will be not as fast as with smoking. For cigarette, it would be typically 5 minutes, and for nicotine pouches, some 20 to 60 minutes. And we do know that the fast peak, or also called rush or buzz after smoking, is vital to addiction, as it causes strong conditioning between the behavioral act and the resulting reward. And for most of these pouches, the rates are more similar to that of oral nicotine cessation products. But as we've just seen, at high concentrations, this may be different. Not only will the peak height be much higher, but also can the peak be reached faster. So for these new generations, maybe they will be more addictive and maybe be closer to cigarettes. So that's really concerning. Regarding risk assessment, so the most important compounds with toxic effect here is nicotine. And at a certain moment in the Netherlands, we also saw a rise in these products, and our government wanted to act on that, and they also needed to imply a certain law to regulate it, because as I just mentioned, it's not under the not under the Tobacco Products Directive, and also not implemented in the National Tobacco Act. So the way they wanted to go is to regulate it as a commodity, and commodities can't be toxic. So RIVM was asked to do a risk assessment, and the risk was assessed of nicotine, taking as a point of department acute reference dose of 0.0008 milligrams per kilogram of body weight. And that can be considered the highest single dose that can be taken without risk. And it's based on a study where a certain dose of nicotine caused an increase in heart rate. The exposure scenario was 1 pouch absorption via oral mucosa. And then it was concluded that for a typical adult, I would say in those days 60 kilogram is a little bit on the light side for a typical adult in Europe, unfortunately. But then this dose will not be exceeded by 1 pouch containing less than 0.035 milligrams per nicotine. So that's a very low amount of nicotine. You will remember that the typical dose is around 2 to 33, and much higher levels have also been noticed. So for a commercial company, it will not really be worth the while to market such a product, because this will not be an attractive product for a person that wants to use it as a nicotine supply, because one just cannot use sufficient pouches per day. So these products, as of then, were prohibited under the Commodities Act. But then, as we've just seen, industry is very creative, and they come up with nicotine analogs. So in the US, the definition of nicotine is strictly nicotine, and that left open some room for use of components that are strictly speaking not nicotine, but rather an analog. So let me try again. Yeah. So here you see normal nicotine, and here you see 6-methyl nicotine. You will notice that the difference is this group over here, called the methyl group. So it's very similar, but just a slight difference. It's similar to the use of synthetic drugs, where always small modifications are made to make it a new compound that's not regulated via the opium list. And these compounds are sometimes not covered by tobacco laws. I just mentioned the example of the US FDA. In the European Tobacco Product Directive, nicotine is defined a little bit wider as a nicotine alkaloid. So most regulators would consider these analogs to fall under this definition. But on the other hand, many nicotine products, in fact, at the moment only e-liquids are regulated by the TPD. They're not covered at the moment. Also, there's not much known about their toxicity and addictive potential, so this would be a loophole to close. But yeah, at the moment, this solution was not available, so our government asked RIVM again, when these products appeared on the market early this year, to do an other risk assessment, to do the same trick as with nicotine pouches. So these products came on the market, also with the explicit claim that they do not contain nicotine, various levels of 6-methyl nicotine in carefully designed can with several flavors, very similar to, let's say, the classical nicotine pouches. And according to the manufacturer, this compound is synthetic and not of tobacco extracted nicotine, and the argument was thus it cannot be considered an alkaloid. So they were already trying to find some arguments about the TPD definition. So very limited data were available, so it was decided to follow a read-across approach. So the assumption here was that it is as potent as nicotine, and just a slight correction was made for the slightly higher molecular weight, resulting in an outcome that 38 micrograms of 6-methyl nicotine per pouch would be toxic, as compared to 35 micrograms for nicotine pouches. So a very similar and low amount of this compound is already toxic. Yeah, and again, this was much, much, much lower than the amount of 6-methyl nicotine typically present in pouches, so also not very commercially interesting to remain that product on the market. But developments have been going on. So at the moment there's a ban of nicotine pouches containing these levels, but as of January next year, the sale of nicotine pouches will not be allowed at all, not even with nicotine or 6-methyl nicotine in these low amounts. Then they will fall under the Tobacco and Smoking Products Act, and a total ban will apply to these products. So they will be considered to be on the market as a tobacco product for oral use, and a total sales ban will apply to all these products, and also an advertising and smoking ban will be effective as of that day. And this will not only be for oral nicotine products, but also for inhaled products. So any type of nicotine product will be covered by the Tobacco Act. And I think this is good progress. Well, going back to the reports again, we've seen that many regulatory approaches have been used over the world, so as consumer product, as food, as poison, even as medicine or pharmaceutical product, as their own class, so nicotine pouch, as nicotine-containing product, as tobacco-free product, as tobacco alternative, or as imitation tobacco, and also now as a tobacco product. So many different approaches are followed, and it's not really harmonized. So here are the key findings of the report. I will walk you through them. So we've seen that these pouches have become available on many markets worldwide, and that their sales are growing. That they deliver sufficient nicotine to sustain addiction, that they have many attractive properties, and that the nicotine present in these pouches is at a level harmful to health. There are few data available, as they have only been on the market for a short time, and so a cautionary approach is needed. And they are not often not regulated in the law at the moment, and it's advised that countries make their laws future-proof and resilient, and that they also are careful that they cannot be exploited for legal loopholes, such as the case I just mentioned with the analogs. Now, as said, these documents are also discussed at the COP, and parties were asked to consider the recommendations of TobReg as follows. So to establish surveillance, not only of the target group, but also of the different products on the market regarding nicotine pouches, to regulate them, at least to prevent marketing to young people. Also to regulate non-therapeutic nicotine products in the same way as other types of products that look very much alike. And at least not to have these products on the market as pharmaceutical products unless they can be proven to be effective as smoking cessation tool. And that's what I had to share for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. And let's bring in the last speaker, who's going to go over this topic. That is Ranti Fayokun. Dr. Fayokun works within the No Tobacco Unit in the Health Promotion Department of the World Health Organization in Geneva, where she supports country implementation of the Articles 9 and 10 of the WHO FCTC. She has close to 20 years' experience working on tobacco product regulation at national, European, and a global level. Dr. Fayokun is a multidisciplinary scientist with a bachelor in biochemistry and a PhD in chemical science. She coordinates the activities of the Global Tobacco Regulators Forum, the WHO Tobacco Laboratory Network, and the WHO Study Group on the tobacco product regulation. Today, she's going to focus on the regulatory factors of electronic cigarettes and heated tobacco products. Dr. Fayokun, such a pleasure to have you here. You have the stage.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. And it's lovely to see you all today. And thank you for the invitation to present on this very important topic. So you heard from Professor Zaatari, the challenges as well as the science of many of these products. The new challenges also in terms of nicotine analogs being used in these products, the uptake by children, and you also heard from Dr. Talhout the challenges associated with the nicotine pouches, the high nicotine concentrations, and as you said, I'm going to focus mainly on the recommendations, but then in looking at the major challenges and the request put forward to WHO to provide authoritative guidance to address some of the challenges that have been shared by the previous speakers. So I would just start by setting context. I think most of us know what these products are. There are a number of, I don't want to say new, but then we can still regard them as new because there are newer products being put on the market. You heard from Dr. Zaatari earlier that there are now products using analogs and other things being added to these products. So there are some products also that have been on the market for a while, but then they are changing at a very rapid pace given the way the products have been basically, I don't want to use manipulated, but the characteristics of the products are changing, so they're emerging products. So I'll address the first two categories of products, so looking at electronic nicotine delivery systems and electronic non-nicotine delivery systems, which are commonly referred to as electronic cigarettes. And we at WHO tend to refer to them, I know they're not popular terms, we tend to refer to them as such because there are a number of products beyond e-cigarettes. There are e-vapes, there are e-pipes, e-cigarillos, e-shishas, so we try to kind of put them on the, a broader category to kind of take all the other products into consideration. And there are some products, some of these products that contain nicotine. Those are the electronic nicotine delivery systems. And there are some that are not supposed to contain nicotine, although we have seen the latest development with nicotine analogs. But then most of the ones that are not supposed to contain nicotine most times when they are tested, they're found to contain nicotine. We have other categories of products, as you heard from Dr. Talhout, so nicotine pouches, and then HTPs. But then we're not addressing those today. I am going to just talk about the recommendations for electronic cigarettes. So we gave the recommendations for the two categories of products. When you look on this slide, as in like both the left and the right-hand side, you can see that the difference there is nicotine. And as I mentioned, most of the products, we actually conducted some studies at WHO ourselves to look at the products that are labeled not to contain nicotine, but they were found to contain nicotine. So these are some of the products, different types of products that are on the market, but then there are other products now that have emerged in recent times, and I'm going to show you some of those as well. So on the left-hand side, what I mentioned in terms of the different products, e-shishas, e-pipes, and the other products that are available, and then flavors that are being used in these products, many of them are flavors that appeal to the younger generation, as you can see. And I'm going to give credit to RIVM because I really like this flavor wheel on the right-hand side. It's as a result of the research conducted at RIVM. And they look at the yeast liquids on the market in the Netherlands and did this beautiful flavor wheel. I've really advertised it for them because it's almost on every presentation, in every presentation in e-cigarettes that I do. But then the most important thing about this flavor wheel is that there are many of the flavors that are used in electronic cigarettes that appeal to children. So these are some of the products that are on the market, and you can see that they are made to basically appeal to different demographics. So looking at the ones that look like lipstick, targeted at women, the ones that look like toys, and then you can see that on the right-hand side here, this one, it's just so that kids are able to conceal it from their parents because this is looks like a pen, and this also can be popped out and basically vaped because this is a vape and it doubles up as also a wristwatch, as you can see. So this is just showing, it's just to show how the way, the characteristics of the products and the way a user uses the product can affect the nicotine delivery to the person who is using the product, as well as influence the exposure of the person to the people to nicotine and toxic substances. These are some of the known toxicants that have been found in these products with known health effects, and they are ultrafine particles are generated from these products, which can go deep into the lungs, causing respiratory issues. So I'm also going to show you a slide in terms of how these products are being used, because we conducted some analysis also at WHO looking at GYTS data, so that's global youth tobacco surveillance data, so which prompted us, and I think I also mentioned that we get loads of requests from member states to help address some of the challenges they face in countries. So in December 2023, we put together this call to action, and it basically rhymes with the theme of this symposium, taking strong and decisive action to address and to control these products. So this this call to action on electronic cigarettes was issued in December, as I said, and we also issued a technical note providing the justification and also the scientific basis for those recommendations in the call to action. So this is a problem statement, and I'm not going to go over everything because Dr. Zaatari and Dr. Talhout have gone over some of this in terms of the market growing, the targeting of children, aggressively targeting children even as young as 9 at times. And then we found from the analysis that we did, looking at some countries that have national survey data for adolescents from ages of 13 to 15, that the rate of use among that age group exceeds the rate of use in adults. And you can see it very clear on this column chart that adults that are using this product, when you compare to the children that are using this products, that more, when it comes to the rate of use, you have younger children, their rates exceeding adult use in many countries. So the presentation is text heavy for you to be able to refer to the text later, and also so that you can see the recommendations that we put in the call to action as a result of taking a holistic approach to the review of evidence. So we also directed it at different countries, because different countries are at like a different level when it comes to the tobacco epidemic, and also they have policy goals, and also based on their tobacco prevalence, they may wish to take a particular or adopt a particular approach to the regulation of this product. So in recognition of this, we basically provided guidance to all countries, not just to a set of countries. So countries that currently ban these products, we provided a recommendation for them to ensure strong implementation of the ban, but then not to lose sight of the monitoring aspect of things, to also put measures in place to ensure monitoring and surveillance, to have a real-time view of what's happening in terms of who is using the products, even though the products are banned, whether the products are still on the market, and also to prohibit things like advertising and promotion of the products, and also to make sure that strong enforcement mechanisms are put in place. I was in a country and they were like, oh, we banned these products, we don't have to do anything about it. So I was like, okay, if I should then start vaping, can you stop me? They were like, oops, we haven't done anything about that. And I was like, okay, if a manufacturer were to just like put adverts everywhere, can you stop it? They were like, oops, we have to address that as well. So it's always good also, even though countries have banned, to also look at other things that they might be able to do. So, and then some countries choose to permit commercialization of these products. And then we provided recommendations to regulate those products to reduce the harm and the appeal of these products. And we have a whole raft of recommendations ranging from banning flavoring agents, not just flavors, because they get around regulations. So all the agents that can be used to flavor or to impart some kind of flavor to the products, including menthol and synthetic menthol analogs. Also, promotional features are prohibiting this in terms of the way the products is presented. Features that also allow users to manipulate the products post-sale as well. We also heard, I think it was Professor Zaatari that mentioned this in terms of high nicotine concentration. So we provided this recommendation to limit the concentration and the quantity of nicotine to reduce the risk of dependence, setting maximum volume from electronic cartridges, and also regulating the battery power so that it limits the influence of the battery power on toxicant and nicotine delivery. There were also recommendations in terms of prohibiting CMR properties, so those are carcinogenic properties, reprotoxic properties, and also mutagenic properties. We looked at also misleading, and I think it was Laurent that also mentioned that in terms of the way they use misleading. They put all sorts of claims. They use harm reduction, reduced risk, so to also protect the public from those misleading and deceptive claims on safety and efficacy, prohibiting the sale of e-cigarettes to children, specifically reducing access. So if countries permit commercialization of this products in the country so that children don't get access to these products, young people don't get access to these products, and then for countries who want to apply tobacco control measures, because in some countries these products are regulated as tobacco products, so some countries may wish to apply tobacco control measures to these products. So we made a recommendation to apply the supply and demand measures, reduction measures of the WHO FCTC. Monitoring and surveillance is also very important, even when countries permit commercialization of the products. Strengthening enforcement, you heard from Sarah's presentation earlier today, and also sharing information regarding the harmful effects of products. And then this is the elephant in the room, and every time people talk about whether these products are cessation products or not. And as I said, we take a holistic approach to the evaluation of evidence. We also recognize that some countries want to push it this way. But then we think that this should be done responsibly if they want to do that. And they should control the conditions, because if these products are being claimed to be therapeutic products that can be used to help smokers, then they should be under controlled conditions where not everyone has access to these products. I think it was Dr. Peruga's presentation in terms of what how to look at harm reduction. So if people want to make this available to smokers, it should be just to smokers, and it should be controlled. And that is only after exhausting other proven cessation strategies, and only after considering the risk of uptake, because we're looking at the entire population, and we're seeing in many countries that young people are using these products. And then there should be also information on not just efficacy, but also safety of these products, because there are millions of these products in the market. Even most of them, they don't know what they contain. People don't know what they're inhaling. So for cessation, for us at WHO, products should demonstrate safety and efficacy. So for all countries that basically have these products available on their market, a comprehensive approach to tobacco control should be adopted. So, and this is really critical. So countries should look at them in the context of wider tobacco control, and then not use that as an excuse not to address the major issues around tobacco control. We heard from Amanda's presentation earlier when it comes to them selling and pushing their main product, cigarettes, in many countries. So to apply raise taxes, ban taps, health warnings, smoke-free areas, and have mass media campaigns. So in terms of the factors underpinning the call to action, we've spoken about flavors. There are thousands of flavors used in these products. So, and to prevent uptake, this basically should be addressed. Also, we spoke about, I don't know if, was that Ghazi? In terms of some of these products that appeal to the younger generation. And what we found looking at the evidence is that many of these products have increased in size. They contain much more nicotine than the earlier ones, and then they are increasingly cheaper, and young people are able to afford these products, and they are accessible. Also, these products contain toxic compounds, There is high nicotine delivery. Some of them allow the user to increase the nicotine uptake as well. And dual use is a real problem, which is very, very common when it comes to the use of these products. And dual use, I think we heard from Amanda earlier also, is at least as dangerous and more likely more dangerous than just using conventional cigarettes alone. So also the device characteristics, there are some products that are customizable. The battery power can be ramped up, and then that affects the nicotine and the yield of the toxicant delivery as well. So we have different products. The way, I think one of my slides said how the way the person uses the product combined with the characteristics of the products can affect the delivery or an exposure to higher amounts of toxicants and also nicotine. Labeling is an issue. I already mentioned that. And then there is mislabeling, which is a common issue. And then we have this commercial and vested interest in terms of the tobacco industry influencing studies and also sponsoring studies. So we looked at, there was a review of 105 studies analyzing the composition of liquids and emissions, and 30% of the authors had received funding from ENDS and ENNDS interest, and including those related to tobacco and related industries. Again, we are seeing that when it comes to the regulation of these products, while some countries have taken measures to address these products, 88 countries, for example, have measures covering about 2.3 billion people. But you also have countries that don't have like any minimum age at which these products can be bought. 74 countries also, which constitute about 2 million people, have no regulations whatsoever in place. And we also know that some countries have taken measures, including those that have banned these products. So this is my last slide. And then this was extracted from a statement made by the DG, WHO DG, at the last executive board meeting, where he basically just spoke about harm reduction, and he said history basically is repeating itself, but with a different from the same nicotine, but with a different packaging. And the sad part is industry is saying it's harm reduction, and what has harm reduction got to do with children? So to call it harm reduction and deliberately recruit children and use schools as a battleground is dishonest. So I just thought we should end with that. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dr. Fayokun, very interesting. And now we have a few minutes left, so I would like to open the floor for any questions you have for the speakers, both people here in person and online, that you can write in the chat as well. There, thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Sophie Brasnor from the Tobacco Control Research Group at the University of Bath. Hi, Ranti. My question is for you, Dr. Zaatari. In my research, I have come across evidence that nicotine promotes metastatic progression with cancer, particularly lung cancer. And the tobacco industry, of course, has long claimed that nicotine does not cause cancer and is just addictive, sort of implying that in otherwise it's harmless. And in the UK, I find it really alarming, particularly that we see public health bodies echoing this message. You know, nicotine does not cause cancer, and therefore implying that other than addiction, it's somewhat harmless. And so in light of what you presented today, especially around the diversification of nicotine, do you think it's time we need to rethink the messaging around nicotine and its harms? Thank you.
Thank you for this question. I think, at least to what we know today, that nicotine is not carcinogenic. and it has no role in the carcinogenesis. However, to put the label on it as being harmless is very dangerous. And the reason I say this, because we know that if, let's say, I don't want to take guinea pigs or experimental. If just look at humans, you give them a dose of nicotine, even as medicinal or even as use of tobacco. You could readily witness the increase in the heart rate and the blood pressure. And these cardiovascular effects, you know the consequence of them, especially for those who have a compromised health, examples of which somebody who has diabetes, for example. We know also nicotine and these other products have effect on the blood vessels, and they will accelerate the formation of plaques and things like this that will lead ultimately on the long-term use, among other chemicals, to the what we call atherosclerosis and heart disease. So I think, yes, I don't know about all these other analogs, whether they have a carcinogenic effect, but at least there is no documentation. IARC has not designated nicotine as carcinogenic. It doesn't label it into these different categories of cancer-causing agents. So that's the information. But I agree with you always. We have to be on the lookout for any new information or new products that are put out by the industry.
Thank you, everyone, for your great presentations. My name is Liza Lebedeva, and I'm a consultant with the Tobacco Control Unit of the regional office, WHO. I have two questions to Professor Zaatari and also to Reinskje Talhout. So the first question is, where we've seen that we are dealing with highly inventive industry, and you've showed a table with number of countries that address or not address nicotine forms in their legislation. So my question is there out there a good example of definition which covers all forms of nicotine, and also analogs which countries which are considering including this in the legislation can use as an inspiration? Because you also mentioned some recommendations on what to include in the legislation, but are there already examples which countries can use for inspiration?
At least in our group, we didn't come out with a specific text as to what we should state, and that could be. And the reason for this is because, again, we are putting out recommendations, and could be sensitivities that can create problems for individual member states. But that's why I made the reference that we have to be somewhat, as much as we can, inclusive, broad, and try to be futuristic. I mean, the examples was given, for example, the USA, when they put the FDA on the definition of nicotine, and then they left out analogs. So you see, so this where, I mean, the definition there could be useful, but you need to add some terminology to analogs or anything that could be put forward by the industry in the future. And this is where I think we cannot come up and adopt, because this may create some political sensitivities, being a WHO, trying to dictate a particular. But I think the spirit of it is there, and that's why we try to share as much information, what people have used, and each country give them the independence to choose the language. But my advice as a scientist and my scientific group is to make sure that whatever language you use, to make sure it is comprehensive, inclusive, and if I want to leave you with one thing today, shift that paradigm from tobacco to nicotine. Not totally, because still tobacco is in the form of cigarettes, the mostly wide used tobacco product. However, we need to be aware that the industry now is shifting into the direction of nicotine for two reasons. It could be more addictive, more attractive, and also evade legislation. So that's why we have to be on the lookout, and we have to be well prepared for this new era in this campaign against tobacco and nicotine control.
So much for your guidance, and yeah, we never know what comes next, so it's good to be futuristic. And another question for Reinskje. So congratulations and really well done to the Netherlands for its very strong action on tobacco and also nicotine products. So with the ban on nicotine pouches starting next year, yes, total ban. So I wonder and whether you can elaborate a bit on it. Do you foresee any challenges in terms of enforcing the ban and other plans or mechanisms in place to ensure compliance, and especially, for example, in online retail? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the compliment. I indeed think that it was an important step forwards for the Netherlands. And as I said, I do hope that with the revision of the tobacco product directive, such a step will also be considered. Will there be problems? Yes, I'm sure there will be. But first I want to echo what Dr. Zaatari just said, that it's very important that countries think forward. For example, all those discussions about synthetic nicotine and nicotine analogs, we wouldn't have to have had them, and it wouldn't have taken up so much capacity if we didn't have these definition issues. So that's one. One could put one's time and efforts to a better purpose, maybe. And regarding what could happen in the Netherlands, yeah, of course, one will need to prove whether there's nicotine present or not. Maybe there will be lawsuits saying, yeah, that it's not in line with harmonization, in line with the European directive to implement such ban on nicotine products. I really don't know. We also have seen that with the flavoring ban, so that one could only use certain allowed flavorings, that there was a lawsuit. So I'm sure that it will happen now, but I'm not a juridical expert. But yeah, I think the government is already ready for that. Yeah.
Okay, I think we have time just for one last question. There.
Hi, I'm Alejandro Frino from IDIVAPS here in Barcelona. First, congratulations, it's excellent your speech, each one. A question, at lung level, nicotine could be lessive for the alveolo and perhaps makes the first kick to the fibrosis, lung fibrosis. What do you think about this? And second, I think we are backwards in environmental aspect with the tobacco, because now we have the bats, a little thing in the floor, but now I saw complete cigarettes from the head-not-bound tobacco, which has nicotine, which has tobacco, and has a little metal plate that is inside from the IQOS one. And the plastics, batteries, and everything you have in one e-cigarette. Yeah, and the people is throwing that, and I think is go back and very, very bad for the environmental. Thank you.
Regarding, if I understood the question about pulmonary fibrosis, is this what about pulmonary fibrosis, right? We don't have enough data yet to see if there is evidence of pulmonary fibrosis. We have, for example, in the use of e-cigarettes, evidence of what we call pulmonary damage. Particularly in the open systems where the users will add substance of abuse or some vitamins to it in addition that will accelerate, and I'm sure this have led some people to have very severe pulmonary disease and die. These are obviously the exception, but we know that the use of tobacco, of any product, will lead to specific pathology that we recognize in the lung. I'm not going to burden you with this, but I would love to, but I know I'm not talking to a pathology audience, but I can tell you that there are several pathologies that we see in the lung that are typically seen in smokers, and we don't see it in non-smokers. So there is a relationship, there is a link. We know this could be accelerating process of enhancing fibrosis, but I refrain from giving a specific. We have done some experiments in animals, and we have demonstrated that by the use of the e-cigarettes, there is an element of increase of inflammatory response in the tissues of the lung by the use of these products. More so, what's even more important to us is that we took also diabetic mice and compared them to non-diabetic mice. And I hope I'm not burdening you with this. I know I'm getting into more science and medicine now. If we take like a diabetic mice and compare it to a non-diabetic mouse, the degree of inflammation is more exaggerated in the diabetic mice. So the question is how this translates into humans. That is, while this may have minimal or no effect on a non-diabetic, would it have an exaggerated effect on a diabetic? So these are questions we don't have the answers, but at least we have to be alert and aware, and that's why we're very keen about not rushing to adopt and embrace these new technologies with the notion of harm reduction. We're very cautious, we're very careful, so your question is appropriate. Now, in regard to your second comment, you're absolutely right. 2 years ago, the theme of No Tobacco Day, World Day, that it was on environment. And there was a lot of data that was published on the waste that is coming out to contaminate the environment by the use of these new products, specifically ENs, because they have this kind of metallic devices that are thrown, and also they're being thrown on beaches, in city communities, etc. They're complicating the problem of waste management. So your point is very well taken, and as I mentioned, 2 to 3 years ago there was a lot of specific data on the magnitude of this problem worldwide.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a shame to anybody wants to add something? No? Okay. And well, it's a shame to finish this discussion, but if anybody wants to ask something to the speakers, I encourage you to do it during the break. And well, so now we finish this second session, and let me thanks again to the speakers and the audience for the questions. Thank you very much.